Yeah, recently there's a lot of interest that's been created about the study, the paper that you've published, and the study which was first reported in Boston Globe. Can you tell us something about it? What's the study about?
So the study is about the Paris Agreement that happened in December, and how does that impact local climatic changes here in the US. So we've done some work related to that, and that's what the study is about.
What is your motivation to carry out that study?
So the motivation behind the study is really, as you know, the world leaders met in Paris in December and decided to take action to address the issue of climate change. Uh, they agreed that we must limit the global mean temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius or 3.2 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial levels to avoid any dangerous impacts of climate change. Now the key word there is 2 degrees Celsius global mean temperature rise. What we wanted to see is that how is that global mean, global average temperature change related to local changes in temperature and precipitation. When you think about global mean temperature, it's essentially calculated by averaging land temperatures as well as ocean temperatures. And from previous studies, we know that land temperatures are warming at a much faster rate than the ocean temperatures. So what you would expect is that land areas are warming at a faster rate. And so that means when we think about 2 degrees Celsius global mean temperature rise, you would expect land areas to warm greater than 2 degrees Celsius. And that's what we wanted to see for different regions in the US, at how fast is some of these regions warming and how much warming there will be if we reach this 2 degree Celsius target set in Paris. So the main findings are, so we can think about our results, the results of the study in two different ways. We can ask one question, that is, if the global temperature reaches 2 degrees, what happens locally? How much does the Northeast warm? And we find that when the global mean temperature reaches 2 degrees Celsius, the Paris target, the Northeast warms by about 3 degrees Celsius. So that's one of the findings. We can think about it slightly differently. We can ask the question, when will the 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise happen here in the Northeast? And as you can imagine, it happens way before the global temperature reaches 2 degrees Celsius. So what we find is that the Northeast is about 10 to 20 years ahead of the global mean temperature. So if the global mean temperature reaches 2 degrees Celsius by 2050s, here in the Northeast we'll be experiencing 2 degrees Celsius warming by about 2030s or 2040s. So those are the main findings. But we also describe results, similar results, for all the other regions in the US, in the lower 48 states. And one of the other important results that's being talked about is the Northeast is the fastest warming region within the lower 48 states. So all the regions in the US are warming faster, at a faster rate than the global mean temperature, but amongst those regions in the US, Northeast is warming the fastest.
What are the impacts of this study?
Now that's something we haven't looked at in this particular study, but I work with ecologists and hydrologists at the Northeast Climate Science Center, and they are really interested in finding out what the impacts of these results would be on ecosystems in the area, or impacts on rainfall and associated flooding in the area. One of the impacts is going to be changes in sea level, and we discuss not only the 2 degrees Celsius target in this paper, but also 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And that's because in Paris, all the small island nations insisted that that we should really be focusing on limiting the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius because they thought that 2 degrees Celsius is really dangerous when we consider the impacts of sea level. And so going forward, I think impacts of sea level on the eastern coast are going to be really important, particularly for Boston. And there are many different studies looking into those factors.
Different news agencies are picking up your story, and as you find your study being reported in various outlets, what are some of your concerns as you're reading the discussions around your study?
So I think we need to be careful when we are talking about these studies, and there is some confusion about how sometimes this particular story can be talked about, and that's because here we're talking about a comparison between changes in local temperature with changes in global mean temperature. But sometimes people tend to, when I say global mean temperature, people tend to focus on the word global and interpret that as the rest of the world. And so people interpret this as, oh, the Northeast is warming faster than the rest of the world. But that's a misrepresentation of some of our findings. Because what we're really saying is the Northeast is warming faster than the global mean temperature. And as I explained earlier, global mean temperature is really an average of land and ocean temperatures. So there are many other regions in the world that are warming at a much faster rate than the Northeast. If you look at what's happening in the Arctic or high latitude regions, they tend to warm at a much faster rate than regions along the tropics. So I'm careful to always say that we are comparing the Northeast temperatures with the global average temperature. And so I wouldn't say that the Northeast is warming faster than the rest of the world. I would just say that the Northeast is warming faster than the global mean temperature. And that's important because the global mean temperature was what was used in Paris. So the 2 degrees Celsius target is based on global mean temperature. And so it's important to make that distinction.